good evening. And it's a cold, dark night in London, ideal for tonight's trick or treating. So, is this going to be a trick or a treat? Well, let's find out. But I'm really hoping you're going to get a great treat from this evening's session. Now, my name is Dalim. I'm very pleased to be the chair of three great groups in the British Computer Society, the Chartered Institute for IT. And we put on events as some of our main activities. And this evening, we've got a great one. We've got a great one, which I won't spoil the surprise, but I'll let my colleagues introduce. Now, the two colleagues I want to mention to you, first of all, are David Grundy, who's our secretary of the branch, and he is going to be our technical director for this evening and make sure that everything goes smoothly on the technical front, that's to say, to do with Zoom and Eventbrite. He will also be available during the evening in order to capture your chat and comments. So please do enter any questions you have. Likewise, any questions about the session into the chat, and David will pick them up. But the main person for this evening from our side is Aashi, our colleague Aashi of BCS, who is the interviewer for this great session. Now, I have a question for you, Aashi. Who is our great panelist, our great interviewee? Who are you going to be interviewing this evening? Over to you, Aashi.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Dalim, for letting me do this and take over this. And good evening, everyone. And welcome to our another episode of Passport to Success, where we would be unlocking the remarkable journey of our guest. And I'm your host, Aashi Sahu. And tonight, we have our totally inspirational guest with us. Her name is Catharine, and she has already made the waves in the construction and the tech industry and moved from UAE, Malaysia, and UK. Plus, she has worked in the prominent institutions such as Ministry of Justice and House of Commons. So let's give a warm welcome to Catharine. So, hello, Catharine. How are you?
Hi, Aashi. Thank you. Hi, Dalim. Thank you to the organizers to invite me.
Welcome, Catharine.
Thank you, Dalim.
Perfect. So just to start with, Catharine, even though I was, while doing a bit of research on you, so I was already impressed with lots of skills that you have and the work experiences. But just to start with, can you take us back to your roots in Malaysia and how did it all start? Like, how did your construction and the tech work started?
So it's going to be a long journey. So as a little girl, I just love to draw. I love art, and I inherited my dad's skills of crafts and art and design. So he used to make a lot of things. I used to make my own paper doll homes and little things, and that just cultivated. And I thought, oh, I can draw. How difficult is it to be an architect? Architect is just drawing, but of course I did not have a clue what it entailed. But I was just adamant that I want to be an architect no matter what it takes. And I would say that I come from a very humble beginning, and we didn't have my dad was the only one working. I've got two older brothers, and my mom was a homemaker. So we didn't have the kind of career guidance, the professional career guidance, which is normally for people who go abroad. So for education locally, there was very little guidance, and I had a relative who had a draftsman office. So I went to his office and kind of did a bit of drawings, and I said, okay, this is not too difficult, I can do that. But I was not told that how complicated the journey is to be a a qualified architect. And so when I continued my secondary education, like the first part of the education I got, in Malaysia, they divide it into science and arts. So arts is more for kind of being a teacher and all the other kind of professions, whereas if you want to be a doctor, engineer, you go into the science stream. So I actually qualified to get into the science stream in that exam, but I didn't get the guidance to say that I needed science to get into architecture. I thought I needed art. So I just kind of pursued and in fact requested the education ministry to change me from science to arts so that I can be an architect. So eventually when I finished the exam and I did
I'm
my,
so sorry to break you, but is it allowed to change? Was that
well, that's
change was
why
a swift change?
it's was that's why I had to write to the education ministry, because they said, your grades it's good enough for you to carry on. I said, no, I want to move to arts because I thought that's what you need to be an architect. But obviously, like I said, little did I know. And eventually, when I did my A levels, I didn't get the grades I needed. And again, I didn't know the subjects that I needed, or I was just so naive. And I had to do kind of A levels 3 times and I took arts in order to get to university, but still I didn't make it. But I thought, okay, that's not going to stop me. And then somebody told me that I could get into Polytechnic and they had architecture. So I said, okay, fine, I will take, no matter how long the journey is, I will do it. So I went to Polytechnic. I started my certificate in architecture. And by that time, most of my friends were in university. They were going through college, some of them graduating. I was still like just starting my journey into architecture. So, and I thought, no, this is what I want to do. In fact, at that point, my mom was telling me, why not you become a teacher? It's so much easier. It's so easy to get a job. I said, no, unless I really cannot get into architecture, maybe I'll consider, but otherwise I'll try. So eventually I did get into a certificate. And then when I finished, I applied for university again, and I managed to get into university. But in the meantime, when I was doing my certificate, I went for internship to practice in Malaysia. And they offered me a job back when I finished my certificate. And during that time, I was applying for university and said, no, I was working and I did apply for university, but at the same time, there was recession in Malaysia. So quite a number of my colleagues lost their job. So like 30% of the practice, they had to kind of retrench people, and whoever remained had a 30% pay cut. So I had to move in with 2 other friends. Kind of, we were all squashed up in one bedroom, and living with really, really basic, having cream crackers, biscuits to survive kind of thing. And I started applying for uni, and I got a place in uni, but at the same time, my practice in Malaysia, they had some connections in the UK, and they were trying to get job from UK. So they sent a few people to UK to get the experience of working to the UK drawing standards so that they can second the job in Malaysia. So, and everybody was preparing, a team was preparing to come to UK, and that's the time I got offered university in Malaysia. So my colleagues were like, oh, we are all going to UK. Are you not, do you not want to go to UK? I say, well, UK is going to be there. If it's meant to be, I'll go there one day, but I won't get this chance to go into uni, which I've been waiting for a long, long time. So eventually, yes, I did get into uni, and I was among the older students there, as obviously I didn't come straight after A levels. So on my first day there, that's when the lecturer explained the whole journey to be an architect. So they said there's 3 levels. So you've got to do, what you're doing is only part 1. Then you've got to do your part 2 qualification, which is postgraduate. And then while you're working, you need to do your part 3 to be a chartered architect. So I was like, oh dear, what have I got myself into? But then it was like too late. I was so determined that, okay, I'm here, I'll just go for it. And my faculty was just next to the medical faculty. So the tutor told us, it's like, the difference between architecture students and doctors is like doctors can kill their patients, and they said, oh, it's not, we can't do anything, it's God's will. But if you do something wrong, you're going to kill hundreds of people. So your responsibility is quite massive as an architect. And it was kind of, that words will always stick with me. So I thought, okay, now that I'm here, I'll just kind of push for it. And I finished my first degree and I was working in Malaysia. So of course it came to a point like I need to get married. Everybody, all my friends were getting married, settling down, having kids, and I was still kind of still studying. So somehow things didn't work out the way I planned. That was obviously in the Asian culture, there's the marriage proposal as well. So I told my mom, whatever. So she tried and things just didn't work out. And then came to a point I said, okay, now that things didn't work out, can I take my own decision to take the next steps in life? So which is when I decided, okay, I have a childhood friend in Aberdeen. So she kept saying, why not you come for a holiday? So I said, okay, what I'll do is I will come for a holiday. But in the meantime, I'll also apply for architectural jobs in the UK. So I knew people in London, Manchester, Edinburgh, and Aberdeen. So I applied it to, and Glasgow. So I looked at the architectural directory and I applied to every single architectural practice in the directory to say that I sent an email to every single office and told them like, I'll be here in the UK between this date, if it's possible to meet up for an interview. So like sometimes people tell me all you need is that one chance, which is what I got. So this one particular office invited me for an interview in Glasgow, and there was another recruit agent. He told me he'll come and he'll meet me when I get to UK, but I didn't know he was a recruit agent. And then he was trying to set up a meeting while I was here, which was too late. So this one and only interview I had. So funny enough, they offered me a job when I went back. I couldn't believe it. But at that time, the economy here was really good. That was 2005. And it was like they were employing quite a lot of people. So in order to employ a foreigner, you need to show that you're employing people locally and there's not sufficient people to do the job. So which is where then you can employ foreigners. So thankfully, I managed to get the offer. And because in Malaysia, I was kind of, it's like in here, you have to have certain qualification to do certain work. Whereas in Malaysia, with years of experience, you can run projects, you can progress, but of course you can't sign a building off, but you can run projects. So I was literally running projects while I was there. So when I came here for the interview, the director who interviewed me, he didn't realize that I was only a part 1 qualification. So they offered me a job for a part 2 job. And I told them, by the way, I'm just a part 1. So they said, oops, then we got to reduce your pay. Do you still want to come? I'm like, yeah, I'll just come, it's a golden opportunity. So, and I obviously it was subject to getting the visa from here, the work permit. And then they had to submit the work permit to me, and I had to go and apply for my permit in Malaysia, my visa in Malaysia. And even working back home was quite a tough process. And like I said, sorry, I haven't mentioned it, but I'm sure most of you will know that there's very little Indian origin, ethnicity person working in construction, leave alone being an architect. So it was quite challenging. And in Malaysia, most of the construction companies are are run by Chinese, and majority owned by Chinese and Malays. So very, very little Indians involved. So it was quite challenging as well. I was like, my boss really liked me, but I was also his punching bag. So when he's happy, he will, share his problems with me. When he's sad, I'm the first one he'll attack as well. So it came to a point like, no, I had enough. I need to go. And this is where my mom also knew I was kind of struggling at work as well. So she's like, okay, fine, you can go. So the time when I was checking my visa, I went to apply for my visa in British Embassy in Malaysia. and I was checking whether the visa was processed. Believe it or not, that's the day the London bombing happened. So it was like, I was like, what's going to happen now? Are they going to stop everything? Am I still going to make it? So I kept checking, and they just put the come to the embassy. So I didn't know what it meant. So to a point, like I had to fight with my boss to get emergency leave to come to UK, and sorry, to go to the embassy. So when I went there, they just gave me my passport and the visa, and I was like, oh, thank God, it's a blessing. It's meant to be. So then obviously I packed up, did everything I needed to do, and I arrived in the UK to work in late August 2005. And then when I came here to work in Glasgow, obviously coming from Malaysia to Glasgow was not easy. The temperature is different, the people are different, the climate, the language, even the accent, everything. It was just
Catherine, I want to stop you here.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, thanks a lot for sharing. And so you have already answered a lot of questions which I was planning to ask you. So thanks a lot for making my job easier here.
No problem.
But just out of curiosity, now you already got I think so you have started, am I right in saying you have started your first internship by around 1995 in Malaysia?
Yeah, that was my internship when I was doing my practical trading.
Okay, and then in 2005, so it was kind of like roughly around a decade experience in Malaysia and then moving to UK. So tell me about like what were the differences that you saw
in terms
in
of
the
work?
construction field? Yes, in terms of work, like how did that go? Plus, why UK?
So, I mean, like I said, I had a friend in UK, so that was
Okay.
like, she was in Aberdeen, but it kind of, at least I'm not coming to a country where I do not know anybody. I would love to go to Australia, but I at that point in time I came here. So when I was in Glasgow, I rented a room, and I was. The funny thing is, I'm in Asia, as you would know, you can see your shadow and tell the time of the day. When I came to UK, I didn't understand the days getting short. The sun was rising and setting in different directions. So I literally had to buy a compass to orientate myself. So I still have that compass with me. So in the construction industry, everything was different. The software that I felt like I was a kid learning everything all over again. The software the company was using was different. The building technology is different. The way we build buildings and the way the buildings interact with the environment, everything is totally different. So I felt that I was kind of starting from a kindergarten back to understand what construction is about. So not only that, but again, trying to understand people's dialect. Sometimes when they joke in the office, they have to demystify the joke to explain to me what it is. By then you miss the joke. So, and the food, everything was different. So it was really, really, really a challenge. And of course, I was really homesick, being the only daughter as well, but I couldn't just run back home. So it was quite a struggle.
So I totally, being the migrant myself, I totally understand the pain and the challenges behind the kind of you have to go through with adaptation of the culture, language, work environment, plus the differences about like the habits and even the jokes. Sometimes you don't even get those jokes, but you have to even like just to get into the culture. So I'm sure there would be a lot of challenges involved. So now tell me about like, and also being the Indian origin and coming from the Malaysia, it's not very common, especially for the woman to work into the construction field. And also when I say construction, the very first picture which comes is more kind of like the mountains, caves, rivers. So did you actually work in those live practical fields, or were you always more towards the digital construction field?
No, I mean, when I started, I literally used to sit down along roadsides and sketch. We used to
Wow.
physically sketch and draw. We used to use, people who know construction or started long time, they'll know rotring pens. So there's a line thickness for every single line of drawing. So each line thickness indicate different things. And you have to manually draw things. But now, obviously, it's a different world. So sometimes my colleagues and I will tease, the younger generation, they have not a clue what it is to draw and, imagine and sketch, because everything is using the computer and they just use it. You lose that physical touch. And so I had hands-on experience. Like when I was in Polytechnic, it was great because Polytechnic is where people actually teach you skills. I used to build brick walls and kind of do threading on pipes, and I've done physical survey, kind of making concrete, carving wood. So I've got the hands-on experience. So even some time ago, it's to derail a bit, but I was building a waterfall in our garden, and I told my husband, "Trust me, and I'm an architect. I know what I'm doing." So I
That's so
am quite
interesting.
hands-on.
But tell me, with the evolution of technology, how is the construction field is evolving?
With technology, so this is where I thought we have to carpe diem technology and design and architecture. So I don't know if you want to go through me moving from Scotland to London or just jump into technology.
Yeah, stage is yours. You can say anything, but I'm more interested in how did you merge the construction and the tech industry, because both are very big and both are mostly male dominant industry. So how did
So,
you
the
merge both?
construction drawings are usually, for a long time, it's been done digitally. So what I am doing at the moment, I've taken, a lot of drawings are done obviously digital, and it started off with AutoCAD drawings. Now it becomes more 3D. And the 3D is now taken on to another level of integrating information into the 3D, so that you don't just see a model, but you see information on the model. So what I am doing is integrating that information and combining my passion for architecture and knowledge with technology. And because where I'm working now in the Houses of Parliament, it's as an architect looking at conservation, I'm taking it a step further to integrate that information into conservation, technology, and architecture. And as you said, it is a male environment, and it's very frustrating for me. Sometimes I go for meetings, and then all these men that they sometimes they just ignore me, and so I've got to I say what I have to say, and sometimes I just tell them, okay, if I'm not needed here, I'm just going to go. So it can be frustrating, and people who know me, of course, they will treat me in a different way. But you get contractors on site who just don't know who I am, and they'll be thinking, who's this woman, and especially an Indian woman, what is she doing here? And sometimes I even get asked a question like, are you part of the catering team or the cleaning team? Because they don't expect an Indian origin
Oh my
architect.
God.
Yeah, so
Okay.
these are among the challenges.
Oh my
It's
God.
a it's
I'm
a
sure.
unconscious bias, and they just think that you don't get an Indian origin to be an architect.
Oh, wow. And I'm sure you might have done a lot of mind work as well, because I'm sure there would be a lot of courage, because hard skills are fine, soft skills is still we are learning, but more it's also kind of the mindset that you need. And just because you mentioned you are doing it all by yourself, you
Mm-hmm.
moved countries all by yourself, and depending the another factor, which is the visa factor, because even if somebody gets out from a job, so it's not just, especially in the case of migrants, so it's not just out from a job, it's also out from the country. So that pressure and kind of always that fear of not just getting kicked out from the job, but also getting kicked out from the country after working so much harder, and after challenging yourself, and after also about the sacrifices that you have made, because it's moving countries, it's definitely not easy. So Yeah, thanks a lot. And I totally appreciate a lot of things, but I'm also interested in knowing about when you joined the House of Commons as an architect, and which is really truly a commendable achievement by itself. But could you enlighten us about your role there and
So
the projects that you do, and who do you report to?
So just before I go there, I'll kind of rewind a little bit. So when I came to Scotland, as I said, I'm from Malaysia. I came with my Part 1 qualification. So in order to progress here, what I realized that I have to study. So I had to pursue my studies part-time, Part 2. And very often, Part 2, part-time in the UK is only for either EU or British nationals. So they don't do it to foreigners. Foreigners have to come here to study full-time. So because I wrote to the university and I applied, they gave me a few caveats that I had to fulfill. They said, we will take you as a pioneer, a pilot, but you have to prove yourself. So it was not easy. Working full time, studying part time. So what is supposed to be a 2 years course, I had to do it in 3 years. But towards the end of that, it was recession here in 2009. 2011, and I also lost my job. So, which again was not easy. So, but thankfully at that time, I've already met my boyfriend that time, who's my husband now. So he was also quite keen in supporting me. And so obviously he gave me a roof over my head, and I tried to do all sorts of other jobs. There was a point that my friend was running a cleaning job, and I went to clean people's houses. I had to do some ironing. I did some drafting just to kind of earn a decent living, because I just couldn't find any job. I was either overqualified or I didn't have the right experience. And so eventually that's the time that I got offered to do I managed to get some jobs in architecture practice, and they gave me it was a temporary contract. So they called me for 6 weeks, and then they said they didn't have job, and then they called me again. And that time, so the time when they said after the first 6 weeks when they didn't have a job, I didn't want to have a gap in my career. So I started to enroll for a master's course, and in that meantime, the company called me back and offered me a job, but they said this time the job is in Dubai. Would you like to go? So I'm like, fine, better than no job. I jumped on the wagon and I went to Dubai. So what was supposed to be a 2 months contract in Dubai ended up 6 months, which was quite another experience. I've seen the good, bad, and ugly side of Dubai. And again, it's a very male dominant world, and a lot of challenges as well. But it was also really, really interesting experience. And then at the same time, they wanted to hire me there as a full time, but I wanted to finish my master's, which I deferred because I went away. So I said, no, I need to come back. So when I came back, I didn't have any work. So my company, which sent me, said they didn't have any job for me here. So I had to go to, and at that time, my husband had moved to London, and I was applying for jobs everywhere. I couldn't find any job. And I was traveling back to Glasgow to finish my master's. Eventually, I got a job in Ministry of Justice, which is where I started my digital construction journey. So, which is also known of the building information modeling. So, Ministry of Justice was the first to embark on this journey in the civil service, and they employed me because of my 3D graphic skills, my 3D digital graphic skills. So they said if I could do that using SketchUp 3D, I should be able to develop into the other building information modeling, putting in the additional information and data. So what was meant to be a temporary contract ended up, I got a permanent job there. I was there for 6 years. In the meantime, I was still adamant to finish my qualification as an architect. So that's where I continued my studies. But sadly, during that time, my brother passed away suddenly. So it was a very, very, very difficult time for all of us. But eventually I had to pick up the pieces and try to finish and qualify. So from the time I started my architectural journey in 1995, I qualified as an architect 22 years later in 2017. So yeah, that's kind of, and while I was working in Ministry of Justice, I was headhunted by a recruitment agency, which invited me for an interview in the House of Commons. And I said, okay, what have I got to lose? I didn't know much about conservation at that time, but I thought I'll give it a go. So thankfully I got the job now. So the team I work with is very, very knowledgeable. They are more of the, at that time, the demographics was a lot of the older generation, and they didn't know much about tech. So they said, you know about digital construction, which is how they said, they led me to my own device, because nobody knew what I was doing or what I was capable to do. Even I didn't know what I was capable of doing. So, but when I came into work in the parliament, it was, to me, it was kind of, I won't even say it's a dream come true, because I thought it was not even possible to dream working in the parliament as a Malaysian Indian. So something which I've seen on TV as a little girl, I was literally there. So every day I felt like I was coming to Disneyland to work. So it's like, wow, I can actually walk around this place. This is real. So that's that's experience. Like every time, it's something that people always say, wow, you're actually there. Sometimes I pinch myself, am I really here? Yeah, I am really here.
But as they say, like success often comes to those who constantly keep on looking for it. And you are actually the life example for somebody who keeps on what keeps on leaving their comfort zone. Always you were like, okay, if it's a UAE offer, let's take it, let's dive into it. And then again, like you are always constantly on the move. So I wrote one very interesting question for you so that I don't forget to ask this question, which is like in a country rich with history like the UK, how do you navigate the intersection of modern construction and the heritage conversation?
It is quite tricky, and it is something that my team and I constantly need to educate people. So the parliament is an organization that is massive. So we have got like 5,000 people working there. There is, it's, if you imagine, it's like an island. There's a department for everything. We've got from catering, security to every single thing. And there's a lot of stakeholders. So I work in the team that is part of the business as usual. So we manage the estate and we take care of the estate, and the members, the MPs are our clients. So we need to provide service to them. So our job is to take care of the building, to preserve the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And as an architect, it's my duty of care to preserve our cultural heritage for the future generation. And a lot of times people who come to do any work or come without the heritage or architectural background, very often they just come and do certain things which they are not meant to do. So this is our job as a team, to educate and explain to people what you can do and what you can't do. So, and advise them how to do it correctly. So you just can't use, say, for example, a stone, repairing a stone if you're building a brick, a wall with stone. And in a heritage environment, you need to use a particular type of material, whereas if it's a new build, you use a different type of material. So all of this makes a lot of difference. So you need to be able to know in order to deal with it. And sometimes when there's problem, people just go and fix the problem on face value. But in a heritage environment or in any environment, we need to find the source of the problem. For example, if there's a leak, you just don't go and repair what you see. You need to find out the source of the problem.
Oh my God. Okay. So first tell me, like while you were saying, so there's a question which I just like it's actually bothering me, because now it's like you are already into construction field. You are already linking the construction with tech. So your hard skill, you have already mentioned what are the degree you went to with and what are the skill set you developed throughout your journey. But while working in the institutions like kind of UK Parliament and the House of Commons. Like, tell me about the history knowledge. Was it something like you were already curious to learn about the history, or you
Well,
just learned on job?
that's a funny thing, because when I was in school, I hated history.
And
It
that
was
too, it's like,
so difficult for me to remember, the kings have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then
hmm,
you need to remember all these things. I'm like, history is something which was so difficult. But after coming to work in the parliament, I really embrace history. I'm really thirsty to learn history. And I now watch any historical documentaries, or we go to visit heritage sites. And because to me, it's like fixing a shattered puzzle. So every time I find something, it's like joining in the puzzle. And because where I work is just full of history and layers and layers and layers of history. The oldest building there was completed in 1099. So when I got to know that and I went to work there, I felt like I always tell myself, I feel like I'm a floating feather in time, that
wow.
I feel that I'm given this opportunity to do what is right, to preserve our cultural heritage for the future generation. So I'm here now and gone tomorrow, but all this building, if you do the right thing to take care of it, they will be here forever. And what better time
Hmm.
is it to, compared to now, to use digital to integrate this information so that we can preserve it for future. So this is my approach to it.
Wow, amazing. And now tell me more about, like, how do you think emotional intelligence plays a role in your day-to-day life and in your day-to-day challenging roles that you are
Eh,
performing?
So it's like, because I don't lead a team, but I lead the strategy that I'm doing. So I've got to engage
Okay.
with people from different levels, senior management to people who do the job. So you need to be able to engage in different levels of conversation to make complicated information and share that in a very simple way, that so people can get the idea of what you're talking about. At the same time, you need to be able to interpret the technical information to technical people for them to get the job done. So, and I think the best way is you need to have this a way to engage emotionally, to understand our emotions, as well as look at how people look at it. So there are some times that people don't, the way they perceive things may not be the same. So this is where I feel that now I believe the world is moving towards emotional intelligence than the IQ. IQ used to be a buzzword once upon a time, but I believe now it's important to be a bit more engaged with people and to
Hmm.
interact, rather than kind of being a dictator and tell people this is how you do it. Because only when you get the people's buy-in, they'll have the passion to do what you'd like to do. And I can't do this alone. I need people. I need
Definitely.
yeah, I need everybody's support to carry this forward. So whatever I've achieved, I've not done it alone. I need everybody to work with me.
Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned that thing because there is a saying like if you want to handle yourself, use your head, and if you want to handle and work with others, use your heart.
Mhm.
So that drives me to another question. It's like, how do you actually maintain the different kind of the balance between EQ and IQ in your challenging roles? Because sometimes you have to make a the priority because even though I would like to have both, but sometimes it's like you have to slightly prioritize something over the another. So, what would you
Um,
say on that note?
I think I don't look at it segmentedly. It just comes at second nature. You just kind of develop the skills of just interacting with people. You need to be able to
Mm,
communicate with people to a point that they will respond to your communication, and not think of you telling them something to do, but you want them to do something with you. So only when you get that kind of conversation going, you will have the interaction where people want to work together. Otherwise they'll be thinking like, oh, that's your job, you go and do it, why should I do it?
hmm,
So I don't kind of segregate it. I think it's the approach and how you talk to people that's important.
Oh, definitely. Okay, so can you share any of the incident where your EQ played the important role?
Um, I can say what comes to mind is when I was at an event. Again, this was something that I wanted to mention as well. Um, being Asian origin, Indian in architecture and conservation world in Britain or in this side of the world, I will say I'm kind of like a panda. There's not many of me. So when I used to go, but thankfully because of what I'm doing, I'm being recognized for what I'm doing, and I'm invited to talks quite in various places in UK as well as in Europe. So I very often when I first turn up, people just look at me and wonders like, what are you doing here? So, and this is where I need to kind of take a step back and it's like, just keep calm and carry on, because this is whether we like it or not, there is the unconscious bias. So I would like to take this opportunity to kind of say that, we are in a very multicultural country and society, and it's a very heritage drawn country. So, but I don't feel that there's a lot of people coming from abroad who engage in conservation or go to heritage or historic sites. I don't understand why, but I just wonder. It's a place where you see a lot of white people around. You don't see people of color. Very, very, very seldom you see people of color. So I question, why are people not embracing it? To me, I feel that I've made this my home. So I want to embrace it in all possible way and to understand the culture, the heritage, and do my part to preserve it. So this is where, when it comes to kind of, like I said, when I go for this kind of events, the first thing when people look at me, they're like, what are you doing here? So when I actually, after my talk, they come forward to come to speak to me. So I have to keep calm and, don't let my emotions get over it. So just,
Hmm.
once they come and talk to me, once they've heard me talking, the conception totally changes. So this is something I think we have to break the glass ceiling. So it's happening, but very, very slowly, especially in the conservation architecture world. It's very, very slowly. So,
Mhm.
which is, I hope that one day I can break that glass ceiling.
But yeah, I so tell me, like, what do you think? Because there's a lack of diversity still. Like, it's not just the gender diversity, but even like people of colors and other people who are not often seen in the houses and the rooms like this. So, what do you think? Is the environment which is not that welcoming, or the people themselves, they are not coming
I
and
don't know.
taking these roles?
This is why I'm kind of using this platform to kind of promote it. So I do not know why people are not being driven to go to and visit these places. I know a lot of the time people who come from abroad, you want to make a living, but I
Hmm.
think it's not just that. You come to for another place, you need to embrace and absorb the environment you're in. It's not all about the money. You need to know the culture, you need to know the heritage. At the same time, you also need to protect your own culture and heritage. So I think we are in a position that we are in the best place to do this, but not very often people embrace it. And in the Indian or Asian way, the mentality to kind of push the children is mostly you have to be a doctor or an engineer. I don't hear
Hmm.
anybody saying that you have to be an architect or a construction background. So
That's so
again,
true.
there's that misconception or lack of education. I don't know what to call it. So there is
Mm.
very, very little people who are involved in my world, basically.
Also, I would say sometimes people don't know what they don't know, and when people like you who are openly sharing about their journeys and what are the skills which are required to go there, because sometimes it's like when somebody sees like, okay, UK Parliament, which means like you must be from UK, you must be well aware of the history, historical history, like everything beforehand. But I'm glad that you mentioned like it's not always about the history, but it's like how much you are ready to learn.
Yeah.
That plays the major role as well. And so before I wrap up, do you have any words of wisdom for, especially for the girls who are, mm, I would say, especially for the young girls who are aspiring to take such roles in construction and into the big names like UK Parliament, House of Commons?
So I will say, like, first of all, you should not ever compare yourself to somebody else. Everybody's got a different journey in life. You need to do the best you can, and do not let your age, gender, or your place of origin to limit your capability. As long as you have passion for something, you just go for it. It may take long, like for me it took 22 years, but that
My
doesn't
God.
stop me. And it's like, as long as you have passion and patience, you can persevere. So I would like to kind of a quote which I always refer to is from Denzel Washington. It's like, don't just aspire to make a living, but aspire to make a difference, which is what I try to do.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know like we are running closer to the end of the session. And before I wrap up, I just really want to thank you a lot for sharing your remarkable journey and the experiences. And just for all the viewers and listeners, I want to mention like we would be dropping all of the points of contact so that you can reach out to Catherine and ask whatever questions you have and how did she make. And I'm sure she's such a sweetheart. She's always ready to help. So yes, now I have many questions, but one session is really very small to ask you all of the questions. So I would leave it to the listeners. So are there any questions that you people want to ask from Catherine?
You can type your question in the chat, or if you raise your hand, then we can unmute you.
Thank you,
So
Sandra,
there's
for your
one.
question or
Okay,
your note.
perfect.
Yeah, I've seen Sandra's note. So I'm glad that I'm not the only one who's noticing this.
Okay,
Hi.
we've got Jane. I'm going to unmute Jane. Go ahead, Jane.
Hi, that
Hi,
was
Jane.
such a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing. What drives you on a daily basis? So you've given us your overall strategy, which is to preserve assets for future generation. But when you go into such a difficult place as Parliament, which is establishment, what drives you every day on a daily basis?
Like I said, I aspire to make a difference. That's my drive. I know there's something I need to do. I've got a mission, and I just keep going.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks, Jane.
Am I right in saying that when you say like you have made your mind that you want to make a difference, so you have also accepted the fact that sometimes you are going to do something which is not common and you are going to be different.
Yep.
Yes, so even Kitty mentioned like what an inspiration. So I'm
Thank you.
sure you are definitely an inspiration, not just to me, to many. I would say not just to a specific region of the world, but to all the women out there who are trying to enter into the construction field. Even like not just the construction field, but also into the big names out there, and that too in different countries altogether. So now I don't think so we have any questions from the audience. So Jim, meanwhile, do you want to add something like also just to mention here, like you were the tech woman of the UK 2022, and you have another awards which are already mentioned, and you have a lot of feathers, you have attached a lot of feathers to your crown. So tell me more about how did that go? Like how from doing alone you have moved to this mindset, like when you are with people you can make a more difference, like, so is there any kind of turning points which you want to mention here?
Well, like I said, what I'm doing, I need people's support to achieve it. So, but I'm kind of driving the direction and trying to push the boundaries. So in some kind of, to give an example, is like the digital construction in the UK is more biased for new builds. That's how it was introduced. So you can capture the information of a construction project from the beginning through the whole process. All the informations are collated in one single source of truth, and you can use that to maintain the asset. Whereas when it comes to working on historic building or existing building, it gets a lot more complicated because you already have the asset existing. So what is important is you need to start with the end in your hands. So you got to understand what you're having and then look at the bigger approach and what to do, how to do, and how to start the process, that's life cycle from what you already have, and to add on to all the information so that you can maintain and manage it at the end of the project. But unfortunately, the way the digital world is in the construction world, it just gets more complicated because each process of the project, the information is processed in a different format. So one will talk Japanese, one will talk German, one will talk Spanish. So this is another complication where I need to find a way to make them talk the same language so they can be managed. So there's just layers and layers and layers of complication. But what I've just said is just the tip of the iceberg.
Definitely, and that's another thing, right? The to become successful, there's no elevator, and it's always
There's no
about these
shortcut.
stairs. Exactly. So you kept on taking these stairs. So now, if I just wrap it off by asking you if you could list top three transferable skills which are required for any individual who wants to get into the digital construction side of the industry today.
Transferable skills. I would say, first of all, you need to have patience, passion, and determination.
Wow. And when you say patience and determination, I would say these two are really the toughest thing, because sometimes why the fast evolving world, there's like a lot, like, and one job is definitely now it's like it's not enough. So it's like even somebody is like, when I say one job, so people are looking, either they are doing multiple jobs or they are actually looking to do multiple jobs also because of this high cost of living and everything. So how do you maintain your patience? Do you do any kind of mind work or any kind of tricks that you practice in your
Well,
daily life?
recently, to have some sanity, I did something really crazy. I
Wow.
told
Okay.
myself last year that I will do the couch to 5K and run a 5K run, which I did beginning of October.
Okay, that's really very interesting. And how did you prepare yourself?
Well, I
Because
used to go for
why
walks.
I'm saying
Mhm.
this, because you are already working in such kind of high pressure job. So 9 to 5, I'm definitely sure it's not just five.
No,
It's
I
it's
wake up
like,
about 5 something. So I used to go for my runs about 6 in the morning. and then start work about 7-ish, and yeah, just keep going.
Wow, amazing. And yes, so thanks a lot for your time. And if somebody wants to connect with you, so where they can find you and where they can expect a reply from you.
Yeah,
That's
definitely. Do feel free to get in touch on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect. And thanks for everyone who attended, and thanks for the invitation. And thank you, Aashi.
no, it was
Appreciate.
totally our pleasure to have you. And thanks a lot to you as well. Thanks a lot to my team, David, Talim sir, for organizing this. And yeah, please, if you have any questions, so please feel free to drop in the chat. We still have 5 minutes. And even if now you think like it's a lot, because even sitting here while I was listening to you, and I'm like, oh, wow, you were like, keep on giving us the information, kept on giving us the nuggets of like the knowledge, plus how did you were like actually connecting the dots from Malaysia, UAE to UK. It was like truly not just inspirational, but also I would say the eye-opening, because sometimes we ourselves stop ourselves because we think like, no, this field is just for them. But you actually put it wisely, like if you can do it, so anybody could do it, kind of thing.
Yep, it's not
So
impossible. You just need
yeah, first of all,
the
thank you so much for even doing that and making a difference. So I just want
welcome.
to mention like your mission, like yes, you are moving closer to your mission of making a difference, because this is not pretty common what you are doing, and I totally respect you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Much appreciate. And congrats to you too. You are also one of the Tech Women 100.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. But okay, perfect. So I don't think so. We have more questions for tonight, and so we can wrap it off. And yes, so if somebody wants to get connected with Catherine, so please feel free to reach out to her on the LinkedIn, and we would be attaching all of her details on the comment section as well. Thanks a lot for joining, and yeah, stay tuned with more episodes of Passport to Success.
Okay, thank you, Kathy and Aashi. We'll make the video available in a few days, and we will send you an email with the YouTube link. So thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.